research, particularly is very useful for social science and behavioral science people, because here we are talking about one component of the research is qualitative research. So I think others can also relate to mixed method research, but how you would apply mixed method research for natural sciences and all that, I may not have some good examples. Qualitative, so I will go ahead keeping in mind about the research projects, research proposals where there are human beings involved, so that we can talk about qualitative part of it as well. Dr. Preeti, I think we will take the questions. Shall we keep some time for taking the questions?
We can take.
So shall I say that last 15 minutes we can keep for question answer or something, or how do we go about it?
Yeah, ma'am, as per your wish, you can start your presentation. You can do the conversation at the end or in between as you wish. So they are given the authorities, they can mute and unmute themselves.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, there was my own university, ex-university, the MS University, and the Faculty of Education and Psychology, Professor Biswal and Professor Srivastava, for giving me this opportunity. So I'll right away start with my presentation with all of you. Is it visible? My screen is visible to all of you?
Screen is visible, ma'am. You can make, now it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I believe that you have been, somebody has told you about the quantitative research and somebody has told you about qualitative research, and it has also been explained to you how they are different epistemologically and ontologically. In the theoretical approach and the context where quantitative and qualitative research are applied. We understand that the assumptions, the theories, the applications of qualitative and quantitative research are pretty different. However, so when it was, kind of classical paradigm or reductionist paradigm of research, where we were using more of quantitative research, particularly in kind of scientific framework of behavioral science disciplines, people realize that there are several kind of limitations, and there are a lot of criticisms about the depth of understanding of the phenomenon being studied, and reducing it to numbers and codifying, so losing the meaningfulness of the data, so on and so forth. So we went, then there was qualitative research. It gave part to the whole realm of qualitative research. Qualitative research was being used mostly with different social science.
Recording in progress.
Like sociologists, cultural anthropologists, historians, philosophers, political scientists were using mostly qualitative research for understanding the social phenomena. Now it is, we have also adopted qualitative research into the domain of psychology, economics, management, so on and so forth. So what we are targeting today is that to learn that what is the nature of mixed method research. I'll give you some examples of mixed method studies that my PhD students have done and we are doing. We would, recognize that what type of research problems and where you should use a mixed method research. What are the advantages of using mixed method research? And you should also be aware about what are the advantages, what are the challenges of using mixed method research, and how you should take care when you are designing a mixed method research and different types of mixed method research. So going ahead with mixed method research now, we understand, as I mentioned just before a few seconds, that there are two dominant approaches in social science research. One is quantitative and one is qualitative. Quantitative always work with the positivist paradigm, reductionist paradigm, and qualitative always kind of was inductive. So there is a whole paradigm of social constructivism which came, where people believed that the concepts can be construed in the framework of social reality and as it exists in the field, in the nature. So mixed methodology came in the kind of say about 30 and last 3 decades. It kind of become very popular, where James Creswell and Blanco and others started working on it, and talking about where they use both numeric data and narrative data together to interpret the data more meaningfully and to make it more relevant. So when we are talking about mixed method research, popularly it is known as, kind of people call it third research paradigm, third methodological movement, or they call it seeing and hearing. So because you are using narratives and you are using a lot of qualitative methods as observation, interviewing, different types of qualitative methods. So it goes beyond the numeric data collected through the quantitative methods only. Dr. Preeti, are the students comfortable with my pace and style of speaking, or shall I be slow or fast or something like that? Is it okay?
It's good, ma'am. Thank you.
It's okay, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So when you're talking about mixed method research, we talk about mixed method. Where do you use it? And we use both the methods when in one research design, one research. We are using both quantitative methodology as well as qualitative methodology. Then we can call it a mixed method research. The purpose of this research, is to combine, to bring it together, both qualitative and quantitative methods, to provide a better understanding of a research problem. The challenge for all researchers, whether it is, it is one of you or me or anybody else who is doing a research, is to read into the data, read into whatever. It can be narrative data, it can be numeric data, it can be, primary data, it can be secondary data. Whatever data you have, the challenge is to interpret it in the most meaningful way. How we can extract the maximum of meaning and relevance from our data. And I think mixed method research has been very popular because it has helped researcher in achieving that target. To understand, give a holistic understanding to the phenomenon being studied, because we are using here multi-method approach. We are using here, kind of different methods to bring in information, data, collect, kind of all kinds of possible information related to the to our research problem. It gives us, it empowers us, it gives us the ability, it gives us the power to look at it in depth and in breadth and give it more meaning. So what are the book I am referring to is Mixed Method Approach by Creswell, 2014. And also I can show you a book which if you can see, it is a 2018 book, Research Design, again by Creswell and Creswell. Okay, these are the two books I'm referring to, and this you can further understanding, you can refer to these two books. So when you're talking about the core characteristics of mixed method approach, we understand that first we kind of define our research problem and then the research questions, and with response to the research questions and hypotheses that we have designed or that we have framed, we can think about a design where we can use both quantitative and qualitative data. And this data can be collected at different points of time in different sequence for different purpose. And when the data from these two, using both these methods are collected, then we try to integrate it or combine it and interpret it together. I mean, sometimes we interpret it together when we triangulate it. Sometimes we, depending on the sequence, sometimes we explain one category of data with the help of the other, or we expand one category of data with the help of the other method. Okay, so when we're talking about mixed method research, from the very beginning, the researcher has to be clear that how the design is incorporating the logic and procedures of mixed method research. And when all of you are doing research, so when you started choosing your topic and formulating your research problem, you must have taken a stand about what kind of theoretical framework or what kind of epistemology you are using for your research. Isn't it true? So, when you do research, there may be several perspectives and several frameworks, but as a researcher, you have to take a stand that what you choose to use for your own research, what framework, which theory, what kind of philosophy you are going to use for explaining the research problem that you are having. And thus, when you are using mixed method research, you have to be very specific that what kind of procedures you are using for supporting the theory and philosophy that you are arguing, right? Okay. Right. So when we are talking about research problems, where you would be using mixed method research? What is wrong in using one particular method of research? I mean, when I go through the research articles published in international Scopus Q1, Q2 journals, I have also come across research articles where studies have been done with four participants, 5 participants, 6 participants, so on and so forth. So it is not true that we cannot publish papers or we cannot do a research using one method. People use only quantitative method, mostly, when you're talking about, experimental designs and experimental methods, people mostly use, or when we talk about clinical trial research, people used to use quantitative method only. Okay, but you have to look at your research problem. As a researcher, you have to understand that if only one data source seems insufficient, then you need to do kind of a mixed method research. Okay, so like for example, one of my PhD students, she is working on a social communication model of reproductive health seeking behavior amongst adolescent girls. So health-seeking behavior, reproductive health-seeking behavior, there are questionnaires available and she can do. She has already collected data on some 1,000 adolescent girls all over India, from all over India. But when she's talking about, she is planning to design a social communication model which will enhance the knowledge of adolescent girls about the reproductive health trajectory over their lifespan. Do you think the quantitative data will suffice to develop a model? Maybe not, because the quantitative data is coded numerically and it talks about their awareness and what are the sources they reach out to for their health seeking, what are the sources of information and socio-demographic things and all those things. But if she talks to the adolescent girls from different socio-demographic background, from rural, urban, kind of educated, uneducated, slum dwellers, single parent families, intact families, broken families, kind of, there are so many socio-demographic background, and all of us understand that people who come from different socio-demographic background, they live in different social realities, the challenges they face, the problems they encounter, the belief system, the perception, the understanding of health and health-related problems can be very different. So if she would have gone for only quantitative data to understand before, and would have used it for developing a social communication model, it is too obvious that the models it develops cannot be useful uniformly for all adolescent girls from all kinds of socio-demographic background, right? So if you have taken the narratives, have taken pain to understand that how these girls who are from different socio-demographic background look at their reproductive, they understand that what is reproductive health and how it will unfold throughout their lifespan. What are their expectations, ambitions, aspirations? What are the family background? What they can afford and not afford? What they can, what kind of life they are aspiring for? All those things are indirectly, but it does a lot of value addition to understand the existing problem of why these Indian adolescent girls are not prepared for taking responsibility for their reproductive health over their lifespan. So that's how a mixed method design would be most appropriate, and she used it. Sometimes when we are talking about quantitative data, and we may find out we can use T's and correlations and ANOVA and regression and structural equation modeling and canonical correlation and discriminant analysis and so on and so forth to understand, categorize, classify, look at the relationship amongst variables. So, but quantitative data will limit itself to that. You can say that groups differ significantly, groups correlate significantly, this variable influences that variable, this variable, there is a, this amount of variance is explained by this variable, this IV of that DV. All these things can be told and, achieved by using quantitative analysis. But when you want to go further and look at it to understand, to explain the actual scenario, and you want to contextualize it, you want to look at it in the context and the sociocultural background, then you need to go further than the quantitative data analysis. Like suppose somebody studied that how mindfulness generativity and kind of mindfulness. Suppose mindfulness and generativity are linked with the well-being, perceived subjective well-being of elderly population, elderly who are living in institutions, elderly who are living in the community. So when the researcher conducted the study, did you get the problem? Did you understand the problem? Could you hear it? Yes, how the mindfulness and the generativity affects the perceived social well-being, a perceived subjective well-being among the institutionalized and non-institutionalized elderly. Is it clear? Okay, so when the researcher looked at the quantitative data, she realized that institutionalized elderly are not generous, very bad. Why? They are themselves living in institutions and they are not generous. They are mindful. They are, do their physical exercises and everything. So we were a little confused that why institutionalized elderly are not generous, whereas the elderly people who are living in the community, they are very, they want to extend themselves. They want to teach the youngsters the values and things like that, so on and so forth. So what happened? What went wrong? So then we went for an explanation. We looked an explanation to the data, quantitative data. So then we went for qualitative in-depth interviews. And we realized that these, seniors who are living in the institutions, they do not have resources and they are so structured. I mean, their life, their daily routine is so structured and so much controlled. They do not have the autonomy to reach out to people to help them, even though they are willing. Like, all they can do is that help the cook in the kitchen of the institution to cook. They can help some things to do some chores in the institution, but they're constrained by their social reality, which so although they feel generous, they are not. That it is not reflected in the sample behavior. So when you're using a questionnaire or a survey or a scale, so what you are measuring are sample behavior, isn't it? So we basically, the items in a questionnaire, scale, taste, inventory, whatsoever, it measures the sample behavior related to that particular variable, concept, construct, phenomenon, etc. But there is so much more to the sample behavior. Why this is, behavior is the manifestation. What goes behind it? Why it happens in such a way? So then when you need explanation to those kind of sample behavior, you need to go for a mixed method study. Okay. A fourth thing can be a primary experimental design, which needs to be expanded or enhanced. So when you have done, we will at some point of time, we'll talk about an embedded design. So when you have, what is an experimental design? How? Could somebody tell me this? What do you understand by an experimental design?
When there is a cause and effect study?
Yes, very good. There is a cause and effect. So when there is a cause and effect study, what do you do? Tell me further. Yes. So you control, there are control variables, there are control groups, there are repeated measure design, and you do so many things so that you can isolate the effect of the IV on DV, right? You can see that what is the influence of the IV on the DV, cause and effect, right? So sometimes when you use an experimental design, or you are doing intervention studies where you are giving treatments, interventions to the experimental group, and you are not giving intervention to the control group, or it is unwait-listed control, still sometimes sometimes you will see that even the control group has improved in the IV. I mean, that result can come that despite the fact that you have not given any intervention, but something has happened and they have also, there is some kind of change. Or in spite of the fact that you have given intervention, the experimental group doesn't differ from the control group significantly in terms of improvement in the, dependent variables. So what is happening there? So maybe there you would like to embed the experimental design with the quantitative research with qualitative interviews, qualitative methodologies, so that it gives you more understanding and insight into the process that takes place in the process of the conduction of the experimental design. Okay. So, and then that you can also compare different when you are doing case studies. So you may need to do, when you are comparing different cases, you need to use both the methods to make your comparison more valid, give validity to your comparison, and to make it more, ethical and comparable, and so that you can say that I have tried to use different methods to make them comparable. So it is not that I am just talking about the qualitative research or just talking about my subjective understanding of both the cases, but I have supplemented it with maybe background data. Suppose I am comparing two organizations, Larsen and Toubro is a engineering company. They have power also, and I would like to compare it with another power-based company. So what I'll do is that, my cases says that Larsen and Toubro is very effective, very efficient, wonderful work culture and everything. The other company, I will say that it is not so good in their work culture and ambience and work environment and so on and so forth. But somebody can argue that I am biased. It is my perception and it is not true. So in that case, I need to substantiate my case studies of both the organization with the secondary data that is mostly quantitative, their production, their structure, their departments, their support system, their turnover, their employees, their qualification of the employees, work hours, employee satisfaction, etc., etc., etc. Okay. The participants need to be then another case can be where the participants need to be involved in the research. So when it is a participatory research, or when it is you are using participants, it is not the whole research is not controlled by the experimenter only, but participants also are participating in the research process, and there is something called co-development of many people these days believe in co-designing and co-developing the research. So where participants are also stakeholders of the research, they contribute meaningfully to the development of the research, then it becomes very important to use mixed method design. Suppose I am talking about using a cognitive designing a cognitive stimulation app for people, for seniors who are, cognitively impaired. people who have not reached the stage of Alzheimer or dementia, but they have, they have mild cognitive impairment. So my argument as a researcher is that if I can control, if I can give some intervention, so the mild cognitive impairment do not progress to full-fledged or severe cognitive impairment, which leads to dementia, Alzheimer, etc. So, I mean, it will not lead to. So that's why I want to give a cognitive stimulation. I want to design a cognitive stimulation app. But when I want to design this intervention, if sitting in my office room or using my digital knowledge or using my review of literature, I develop a design that may not be used, or that may not be very helpful for all category of seniors who are suffering from mild cognitive impairment. So then, if there are management students sitting there, and design students sitting there, we talk about user experience. Okay, so in cognitive and consumer psychology, in design research, in management research, in advertisement and sales, even in cognitive, when you are talking about cognitive science, we emphasize a lot on the user experience. Who is your user? The research that you are doing, or if you are developing a module. And particularly education students they do a lot of research to develop the modules for the classroom teaching and imparting knowledge. So then when you are developing a module, or you are designing an app, or you are designing a gadget, or you are doing something which will be used by the target group, then you must take into consideration the user experience, where the participants co-construct the whole process, they co-design the whole process, they co-develop the research methods, so that the final product of the research is useful for the target group. Am I making sense to all of you? Are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam.
Good. And then, thank you. And then we talk about when you are using, when we do program evaluation, a lot of, I think last month only, I don't know whether the date is over or not, ICSSR, Indian Council of Social Science Research, advertised, invited grant proposals to evaluate all kinds of government programs that the government has floated, developmental programs that the government has floated, which includes Mamta Yojana, this NEP, all kinds of developmental programs which have been floated by the government. ICSSR wanted to invite researchers to do research on evaluating the effectiveness of the program. So what I always tell my students that, program evaluation is one core component, or it is one of the scope that behavioral scientists can engage in, and students can look into the program. Given the number of developmental organizations, apex bodies like UN, WHO, UNICEF, UNDP, all kinds of developmental organizations, welfare organizations. So program evaluation is a strong core aspect of social science disciplines. And when you are doing a research to evaluate a program, suppose long back in 2012, I did a project on that time Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi ji was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, and At that time, this Times had a, they were trying to say that it was, the campaign was Save the Girl Child. It was not Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao. That came later. But in Gujarat, when it was initiated in 2011, before that, yes. Say it again. Do you want to tell me something else? Hello? Okay. So that you are not audible. Could you please speak loudly and clearly? I can't hear you clearly.
I think ma'am, ignore it. I think she is talking to someone else.
Somebody got.
Shall I go ahead? Do you have a question or something?
Yes, ma'am, you can continue.
Okay.
Ignore
She was
all these
talking
things.
to someone else.
Okay, they are talking with someone else. Okay, please ignore.
Okay, thank you. So when you're talking about, we conducted a study. I compared, Gujarat and Orissa in terms of the female feticide and what are the attitudes, beliefs of parents. We took a lot of stakeholders like pregnant mothers, their family members, the paramedics, nurses and all in the hospital, and the gynecologists. All kinds of stakeholders to understand why there is so much of female feticide in Mehsana. That was at that time 800 and something. Really bad. Now it has improved. And Baroda, and then from Odisha. Odisha is a, they say that it is a poorer state as compared to Gujarat. And many of the doctors and paramedics said that because they cannot afford, that's why they don't do sex selective abortion. What a funny argument that is. Anyway, Odisha is one of the states where 10 districts had, male-female ratio where there are more females than males. So I chose to take Odisha. And so it was, program evaluation, basically looking at the effectiveness of Save the Girl Child campaign. And so that, of course, we had quantitative data, but we used a concurrent design, mixed method design. So we also had a lot of interviews of all kinds of stakeholders, and it added so much value and meaning to the understanding of the scenarios of female feticide in both states. In Gujarat, people were very progressive. They said that we want to educate our daughters and do everything for our daughters. But still, at the end of the day, they said that we want a boy. We want a son. Why do you want a son? Because, look at the different, why qualitative, why mixed method is so important. In Gujarat, in quantitative data, there is a significant difference between the parents parents from Orissa and parents from Gujarat in terms of their attitude towards girl child and male and female children. But through the qualitative research, the results are very, very different. In Gujarat, they didn't want to part with their landed property. Jamin jaigat mein son-in-law ko hissa nahi dena hai. That's another family. So we want a son because who will inherit, who will take charge of our landed property and business and everything. Okay. So otherwise, attitude-wise, very progressive, very supportive, educating daughters and everything is fine. In Odisha, they said that because there is a lot of honor, ladki hoti hai, to family honor ko protect karna padta hai. So all of you understand Hindi, no? I am sprinkling Hindi, little bit of Hindi here and there. So it's a matter of family honor and dowry and cost and all those things which bother parents from Odisha more and things like that. So, when quantitative data gives you information, qualitative data gives you insight. So when you combine information and insight together, wow, what kind of a research that will be. It will add so much of meaning and so much of understanding to the research. And the research as such, I very strongly believe the research is done where we cannot, we should be able to use it, apply the findings somewhere. So otherwise, doing research for research sake doesn't mean anything. So you can just take, kind of 5 variables. I mean, we love jalebi and undiyu so much. Undiyu, to I really, kind of love it so much. But when you do undiyu in research, that is traumatic. If you put 10 variables together and then see that ये variable इसको predict नहीं करेगा, तो ये variable तो करेगा, इसके साथ ये क्या relationship होएगा, that is, I mean, pathetic. So even if you take 3 variables, you should be able to analyze it from all directions with multi-method approach, look into it and see that which variable has what influence on the other variable, and you should make a simple, small, impactful statement. Okay, you don't have to say much. In one research, we cannot say hum asman pe teer nahi chala denge. In one research, we would take a small problem, study it from all perspectives, so that the meaning that I'm finding out, the insightful understanding of the phenomenon should be socially relevant, useful, and can be applied by the policymakers or stakeholders, or the beneficiaries should be benefited from the research. And in order to do that, you have to look at the problem from different perspectives. Right? Do you agree, disagree?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So when you are talking about, kind of, that's what I was talking about, all these things. I have mentioned some of these. So involving participants, comparing and contrasting different types of cases, and develop, implement, and evaluate a program. All these are important for where you should pick up a mixed method design. Well, so these are some examples of some typical situations where mixed method is used. When you're trying to compare results from quantitative and qualitative research, you want to validate the results you have received from quantitative by through qualitative research, or vice versa. So when you want to supplement, to validate your findings from one findings that you have received from you by using one kind of methodology, by supporting it with findings from research done from with another methodology, then you use mixed method research. To use qualitative research to help explain quantitative findings, so I gave you the example. To explore using qualitative research and then to generalize findings to large population using quantitative research. So one of the example is that one of my PhD students, she is working, and we are talking about health-seeking behavior amongst transgender people. What are the challenges and issues, and how parental attachment, relationship with parents affect the health-seeking behavior of the transgenders, and there are some other things as well. So, like when she went to the do you think we can go and do a quantitative research, kind of questionnaire and go to the transgenders to study their health-seeking behavior and the relationship with the parents? It's not possible. It's a very, kind of the target population is a kind of it's very delicate. It's very kind of sensitive issue to ask them about these things. So we would like to, in that research, we had to do a lot of qualitative interviews, interactions, focus group discussions, things like that, because we wanted to understand their perspective, their life realities, and then from that we went on, to develop a quantitative questionnaire. So when you are trying to explore some phenomenon, some issues, some challenges, some some problem, then you want to develop, you want to make it generalize the findings to, you want to make a statement for the larger population, then you use mixed method research. Because if you will do a small in-depth interview of 15 people and publish it, so people will say that is so culturally kind of rooted and context specific. What is the generalizability of that research finding? So you would like to do a large-scale quantitative research to suffice, to validate the research that you have found out by what you have explored from the qualitative research and to understand it better. Then you can make a statement for the larger population, which will be to some extent generalizable. In that case, you use mixed method research. We also, when you are developing an instrument because none are available or useful, then also you do mixed method research. Suppose you want to see that internet addiction amongst, adolescents, or during COVID-19 pandemic, you wanted to see that, you develop an instrument that about what is the, what are the adherence of adherence to the prescribed behavior by WHO in across different socio-demographic segments. So when you are trying to do that, you don't have, suppose you don't have any instrument. So first you have to understand it from the target group, that how do they understand different behavior, the protective behavior which have been advised by the WHO, how different communities see it. So, I mean, we conducted a study where we realized that in Muslim population, washing hand is so common. It didn't come something external to it. And I mean, when they go for namaz 5 times a day, 5 times they wash their hands and feet thoroughly, and it is a very common thing. Like in Jain community, there are some other behavior which are very common. So, I mean, the socio-demographic groups may have different patterns of behavior. So when you are going to develop an instrument, you have to first understand how do they perceive and how do they behave. And then you have to, after understanding that, then you can proceed to develop a scale or instrument to measure the adherence to the behaviors and so on and so forth. To augment the experiment with qualitative data, as I told you earlier, also when you are using a clinical trial research or kind of experimental design, you want to understand the process, why this is happening, how this happened, what are the underneath processes which controls this, what makes a change in the behavior. Well, I have given kind of an intervention, but is it that powerful to bring the change? We did some, kind of study. We some study with HIV positive people where we gave hypnotherapeutic intervention, where we gave, clinical hypnotherapy sessions to them. And believe me, trust me, that the CD4 count improved, plasma viral load decreased. It was a clinical trial research with experimental and wait-listed control group. My sample for the experimental group was, by the time I took the follow-up, it came down to 20. And that was a big challenge, because in India it is very difficult to retain participants. But what I'm trying to tell you, that that was a clinical trial experiment. But when I couldn't believe when the plasma viral load went down or CD4 the count went up, CD3 to CD8 ratio also went up. So, but then we were after each session, after each intervention session, when we are giving them clinical hypnotherapy intervention, we used to take their feedback for everything after each session. So that is, that is what is embedded, I mean, qualitative and quantitative embedded design. So those feedback showed us that, there are other health problems which also subsided, not only. Any questions? See, online is thus a problem. Did you ask any question? Is there anything for me, or it's just something else?
No, ma'am, I accidentally unmuted it. I'm so sorry. Yes, please continue, ma'am. I'm listening.
Dear participants, it disturbs the entire room, so please be cautious.
Okay, so thank you. So the underlying process, that how it works, maybe because they were coming to the university campus, they first time they got an opportunity to see so many other people who are suffering from, who are living with HIV/AIDS, and they came in contact with each other. They supported each other indirectly. I don't know. It may add a lot of meaning to explain the data, kind of with all its components, all its, kind of insights. So those kind of, when you want to augment the experiment with qualitative data, the mixed method design also helps. So what is the reason for using mixed methods? It's kind of, we have talked about it a little bit. Dr. Preeti, I have time up to 6 or 6:15.
It is still 6:15, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. So when you're talking about rationale of mixed method research, we talk about, quantitative and qualitative research. They are brought together, and the triangulation leads to expansion of the results. It validates, complements the findings from both types of methodology, complements each other. Complementarity comes from there. Development of models, kind of when you're talking about developing apps, developing models, all those things, when based on mixed method research, it becomes more authentic, because it has used, kind of data from both the things. And then initiation, so it may lead to, kind of, it may give insights and policy prescriptions to the stakeholders, the policymakers, program developers, welfare agencies, to initiate, or science discipline, to initiate new research, to develop more in-depth research or further research. All these kind of things are possible, and it is supported when you are using a mixed method research design. So this is what we have learned till now about advantages. It it is a way to harness strengths and that offset the weaknesses of both quantitative and qualitative. So complementarity provides more evidence for studying a research problem than either quantitative or qualitative. So it comes from the different sources, brings you more information, more understanding, more insight into the thing, helps answer questions that cannot be addressed by quantitative and qualitative. We have been talking about all this now. Okay. Well, so when doing a mixed method research, there are certain challenges for the researchers which you should be aware about. The researcher's skills to do qualitative and quantitative both is required. So quantitative, when we say that if you have been trained in quantitative paradigm and you do not have exposure to qualitative paradigm, then before doing MMR, multi-method research, you should be trained well about the theoretical base and ontological base in both types of research, and your skills should be adequate to conduct interviews, observations, or qualitative use, kind of qualitative research methods as well as you should have the skills to design a research experimental design, or collecting a survey questionnaire, or to choose the right kind of tools to do a quantitative research. When you're doing a multi-method research, of course, because you use both types of research and methodologies, it takes a lot of time and time and resource. Also when you are publishing your research, or you are you are doing a multi-method research, it is so very important to say that why you require a mixed method research to conduct the research, and what are the value additions, what are the added value, what it does, and how it enhances the application of the research findings to the particular context, or to the particular, with relevance to the research problem. This is like what you do for any kind of research: preliminary considerations, creating a title, posing a general questions. These are like steps of research that you have been taught. But there is something which is important: identifying your research design, mixed method design. You have to say that how you will go about it, and drawing a figure of your design, whether it is sequential, whether it is explanatory, exploratory, and all those things. Okay, I'll run through this. This is almost like, what you have been taught. But when where you come to data collection, you have to be, when I said that researchers should be skilled enough to do a MMR. So in quantitative data collection, you can use questionnaires, survey questionnaires, or behavioral checklist, records, inventories, tests, etc. Qualitative data requires interviews, observations. You can do hermeneutics, you can do narrative analysis, you can do audiovisual materials. You can do focus group discussions, you can do social mapping, so many you can do. So you have to be very clear what kind of method, data collection tool you require for the quantitative data, and what kind of data collection tool you require for the qualitative data. Yes, sir. So similarly, you have to talk about the quantitative and qualitative analysis. Also, you have to be very careful. So quantitative analysis, when you are using, you have to prepare the analysis plan, and you have to say that where and how you are going to integrate the details from both the analysis. So quantitative analysis, you can, you can have frame series of hypotheses. If it is a, you are doing hypothesis testing, you have to be specific about your experimental design. You have to be specific about what variables being studied and what groups you are comparing, if it is a cross-sectional research. Whereas, qualitative analysis, you would have to be very sure that how you are doing the coding. If you are doing a content analysis, if you are doing a thematic analysis, if you are doing a narrative analysis, if you are using a grounded theory, if you are doing, textual analysis, if you are, how you are going to do it, and how you are going to code it is very important. So now there are different, softwares available, like SPSS for SPSS-R and MSTAT for quantitative data analysis. For qualitative, there are NVivo, there is Altis, and there are different types of
બીજું મમ્મી એને જાતે સમજી જશે.
What happened? Sorry.
Yeah, ma'am. But
એટલે તારે આજે જવું હોય તો જઈએ. कौन सा लैंग्वेज?
you can continue, ma'am.
Okay. You can use any of these softwares for analysis, or you can do it manually as well. Okay. So, kind of when you are doing the interpretation of the mixed method research, I mean, this is particularly for social scientists and behavioral scientists. So I mentioned about the epistemology and ontological orientation of the research problem. So when you are interpreting the result, you can bring into consideration what kind of a lens you will be using to interpret the data or draw the conclusion. It can be, whether these are all examples. If it is you are using feminist approach, if you are using a kind of gender approach where sexual orient, you are talking about advocating it for the people from different sexual orientation. You can use social science theory. I mean, from different fields like sociologists from sociology. You know from which discipline you are, you can do it. Okay, so. These are, different types of approaches. When we talk about our worldview, the philosophy of conducting a research, choosing a research problem, and using, you can take a constructivism viewpoint, post-positivism viewpoint, or you can talk about a participatory approach or advocacy approach when you are working on different the program evaluation, or you are talking about some issues which are social issues. You can take this kind of an approach, and you can take a pragmatic approach like action research, where you are designing a model or module or app or something to help overcome the problem related to that issue. So now this is how it looks like. Is the slide visible to all of you clearly?
Yeah, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. So when you're talking about mixing the data, we can either convert the data, we can bring data from qualitative and quantitative and triangulate it and talk about the result. We bring from both sources and then we analyze it together. Or we can connect the data. We can do it in a sequence, either first qualitative, then quantitative, and then we can bring them together to find out the result. Or else we can embed, I'm sorry, there is a B missing here. We can embed the data where we can do it simultaneously. Okay. So where we'll do the data, quantitative and qualitative data simultaneously. So along with, when we are doing the quantitative data collection, along with that, we can seek more further explanation of the data. And likewise, we can embed both methodologies together when we are collecting the data and then bring them together to go for the meaning. I don't know. Just a minute. Okay. Okay. So this is from Crystal and Plano Clark, 2007 book. So they talk about designs where it is either concurrent mixed method design, and embedded design. So when we are talking about concurrent mixed method design, so we can, again, we are talking about quantitative data enrichers, qualitative data enrichers, and we are bringing both together and then interpreting. That is a concurrent mixed method. So both the methods are used separately to collect the data, and then we are mixing it up. When you're talking about the embedded design, we are talking about the, like here, particularly when you're talking about embedded design, it happens for experimental designs more, where we have intervention or pre-test, post-test data with intervention. So we look into the details of the processes, underlying processes of intervention, how it affects. So we embed, the design when we are taking the pre-test and the post-test. We also take qualitative at the pre-test stage and post-test stage, and also in the process. I gave you the example of the research that I did with HIV positive people. So when we took the baseline data, it was a clinical trial research. So when we took the baseline data, that time we took, interviews with all the participants.
दीदी आपका चल रहा है? छह बजे से ये बंद हो जाता है। नेट ठीक से चलता नहीं है। दीदी आपका गाइड ये है।
Recording in progress.
This happens when particularly convergent parallel design is applied, when you want to validate your findings which has come from one source by using another method and validate through the findings which has come from data collected by another method. So when you're comparing, when you are validating, when you are confirming, or using corroborative evidences, then you basically use convergent parallel design. Okay, it goes like this: quantitative data collection, qualitative data collection, separately, and then you compare and contrast here that and validate it, and interpretation is done. The validation, the authenticity of your findings are established, stated by using the using interpretation of data collected separately from by using both the methods. Is it clear? Is it clear? If
Yes,
it is,
ma'am, it's clear.
Ma'am.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's clear.
Ma'am, I have a question here, if I can ask.
Yeah, please.
So, can we just go to the previous slide? So ma'am, when we talk about the data, when you're talking about data collection, how do we go about doing the sample size? Because usually in quantitative data, we see that there is a, the size of the sample would be really big, or, I'm not able to comprehend how do we decide on the sample size when we are trying to do both the datas.
It should depend on what kind of population you are using. Basically, sample size is always selected considering determined by considering the population. So if I am talking about, suppose, skilled Indian immigrant woman in Ontario region of Canada. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Skilled Indian women immigrants in Ontario region of Canada. So I have given so many things. So the population itself is very limited.
Okay.
So then if the population is of 500 or say 5,000, then I can, my sample size, I can take 300 is enough. And basically, whatever the sample size you have studied for quantitative data, out of that, ideally it should be minimum of 10% of the quantitative sample that you should be covered in the qualitative. But many times that is not possible. So there are a lot of things which influences that where you will limit, and for that matter, many times when you're doing a qualitative research, qualitative in-depth interview, suppose 10% of my quantitative sample size is 200. But when I started taking interviews after 40 interviews, I have seen that there is no further information coming up. So it is called data saturation. So if no new information is coming up, I should stop there. If I know after I went to 41, 42, and I said, no, nothing is happening now for the information. So this is my sample size for the quality.
Okay, thank you. So I understood. Thank you.
Then the embedded design. So embedded design is one data set provides a supportive secondary role in a study based primarily on other data type. As I told you, this is basically, it is mostly done when we are using experimental design, either intervention or pre-post design, where we want to support the understanding of the data by using a qualitative method as well. And or else when you are using case studies to compare and contrast, then also you need the help of quantitative data to support it. Okay, so I'm very bad in drawing all these, so my arrows are going here and there. Qualitative data, quantitative data, quantitative, before intervention you are taking qualitative, before intervention you are taking quantitative pre-measure, then you are giving intervention, then you are taking post-measure, also you are taking quantitative and qualitative, and interpretation is based on quantitative data basically. That's why one is in capital. It is basically quantitative study, which is being supported, being explained by the qualitative data. Okay, qualitative data during intervention to understand the process here is taken. So then comes, so we understood that concurrent design, we understood convergent design, we understood embedded design. Now it is sequential design. Okay, so in sequential design, there are three types of sequential design. The first one is explanatory design, explanatory sequential design, where you are first using a quantitative data, then to explain it, that's why the name explanatory, comes the qualitative data, and then you interpret it. So first comes quantitative, then comes exploratory design, where you don't, the problem is completely new, like my student's transgender health seeking behavior. So she went for the qualitative data first, and from that she developed a questionnaire, which is quantitative data survey will be doing, and then there will be interpretation. And then sequential embedded design is again, before intervention, we take the qualitative data, and then we quantitative intervention trials, and then here also we are taking, during the intervention you are taking the qualitative data. After intervention we are doing kind of taking both kinds of data and interpreting it. So so as you see, these are the types of designs we talked about. So it can even read it according to the priority given, emphasis given. So what is explanatory sequential design? As I told you, I'll give you an example. I have 5 minutes left, right, Dr. Preeti?
Yeah, ma'am.
So I'll give you an example of this. Explanatory sequential one fast design, where we are talking about, like, suppose I briefly talked about this problem, study of mindfulness, life skills and work engagement amongst corporate managers. So here student wanted to study that how the mindfulness and life skills of corporate managers affects their work engagement. Her argument was that mindfulness and life skills would affect the work engagement at the workplace of corporate managers. And she initially used mindfulness questionnaire, life skill questionnaire, work engagement questionnaire, did a SEM, structural equation modeling. But then she thought that how mindfulness is affecting work engagement. And then she selected 10% of the corporate managers and looked at how they feel about their mindfulness, what it does to them, how they explain that their mindfulness affects the work engagement. And life skills as well. So that was one example. And the second was generativity, resilience, and mindfulness, psychological correlates of physical health and subjective well-being amongst young elderly, which we did across institutionalized and non-institutionalized elders. And here also we were very keen to understand why they were not, we first got the quantitative data where we couldn't, we failed to understand why institutionalized elders are not are poor in generativity when they are high in resilience. The group which was high in resilience and mindfulness were still lacking in generativity. In general, it showed a positive correlation between generativity, resilience, and mindfulness, but institutionalized elders didn't show it. So in order to explain them, to understand them, so we went for the explanatory sequential design. Then we would go to exploratory design, exploratory sequential design. So this is from another research where we studied, say first we went for the qualitative data. This study was about studying equanimity. Equanimity and its psychosocial health concomitants. So when I say equanimity, many of you would start thinking about, although you must have heard about it, but to operationalize it, to understand it, to measure it, it's a Herculean task. Is equanimity equivalent to mindfulness, or is it different? So when you are using a construct which is not well defined, that we don't have measures, like I told that sometimes when you develop a tool, you need to use mixed method. So when that happens, we go for a qualitative study first, because we wanted to explore the concept, explore that how the monks, people who are kind of monastic and non-monastic, people who stay in temples, monasteries, and all those practice religion, how do they understand equanimity and how they do not, how others understand it. So we went for a qualitative research design first, and then we developed a scale to measure equanimity, and we validated it by relating it with health concomitants like well-being and resilience and things like that. So that is how we go about, depending on the purpose of the research. So, kind of when you are going for utilizing a mixed method research, there are certain things which you keep in mind, like there are 4 aspects which Riemann talks about. That it gives you completeness of the research, okay? It gives you a holistic understanding. It illustrates, when you talk about use both the methods, you have the support of narratives, you have the support of the verbatims, you have the experience, phenomenological experience of the people. It illustrates what you are talking about from your quantitative research. It helps you in developing an instrument or developing items, and it provides greater validity to your study. Embedded research design, again and again, I have been telling you that it is, it is used to enhance the understanding of the process in experimental design, intervention studies, and, it makes a meaning of why things are reported the way they are. Okay, so there are, in mixed method design, there are types of mixing, like we talk about connecting data, which happens through the sequential design. We talk about merging data, which happens through the concurrent or convergent, both, and embedded design, where sequential or concurrent design happens. And we can talk about, you can understand about it better when you go to the books. So there are concurrent designs and sequential designs. So issues, challenges which are linked with both the designs. Concurrent designs, somebody asked me about a sample. So how, when you are doing it concurrently, how do you decide that how much quantitative or qualitative sample you should take? Because you are doing it simultaneously, so how would you use strategies to explore contradictory findings? So sometimes in the quantitative, from the quantitative study, you have some findings, and qualitative study some findings, and they may contradict each other. So how to make sense, how to explore it further to be sure that why it is happening. So, and you have to be sensitive to bias from one data collection to the other, because it is happening concurrently. So you may carry over, there may be carryover effects, spillover biases from one method of data collection to the other. Whereas in sequential design, you have to, you have to take a I mean, I have faced it so many times. In the elderly study generativity mindfulness, we were very, we were in a dilemma whether to, for the qualitative study, whether we should take a subsample of the quantitative sample or not. because they are already exposed to the research problem. You have already done the survey on them, so there is some kind of exposure to the objectives of the research, which may bias the qualitative responses. So this has to be, you have to use your discretion that whether you would take a separate subsample for qualitative research or you will select one from the quantitative sample. In explanatory design, you have to consider alternatives for follow-up qualitative sampling. So when you are taking the qualitative sampling later on, so you have to be basically in both sequential designs. It is important that you should conscientiously and ethically choose the sample in such a way that the responses are unique and they are not biased by their exposure, kind of expectancy. Okay, so that is how we come to the end of the session, and I hope you have got a precise understanding of mixed method research. Thank you very much for attending the session, and if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Good evening, ma'am. Can you please elaborate the triangulation method, ma'am, with an example? It is possible, ma'am.
Yes, why not? Triangulation, basically you bring in the findings from both methods that you have used, and here we are simultaneously looking at the similarity, the divergence, the contradiction, and our basic objective is that to supplement the findings that we have found in one method through the findings that we have found from the other method. For example, suppose I am talking about suppose I am talking about the sources as this health-seeking reproductive health behavior among awareness amongst these adolescent girls. So we, when we conducted workshops with them, we realized that their awareness is limited about reproductive health, and when asked about the sources from which they get information, we found out that it is there are no it was mixed result. I mean there are not significant sources that came out, but when we went and interviewed these adolescent girls in the separately, most of them said that the information source, usually adolescent girls, when they're having their menarche or something, the older women in the house should tell them, they basically tell them about all the things, but that is very insufficient, and that is only the functional knowledge, but about the health related consequences, the purpose and everything, they never got this information from elder women in the family. And when we interviewed women from other age groups, we realized that most of them reported that in the age group of 35 to 45 and 45 to 60, they said that we got the information, most of the things we learned from our partners after marriage. And so there is no, the triangulation is that there is no systematic way of gathering information, or in Indian societies generally, the adolescent reproductive health information is not imparted consciously and systematically in a holistic fashion by any of the information sources, even in the school or the woman in the family. So we do not put the emphasis what information is important and what is not so important. So we brought the info, these kind of findings can be triangulated, and we could see that why there is a lack of awareness and understanding of the about reproductive health in the adolescent girls. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
In relation to the same, I just wanted to find out what happens to the assumption of generalization of the results when the whole process of triangulation has been done? Does it still hold in MMR methods?
Yeah, when you are writing as a researcher, when you are interpreting your results and making a statement, of course you triangulate your results through triangulation. The findings will be reflecting that triangulation helps you to explain your results, so that gives authenticity for the generalization of your results.
Okay.
I hope the queries are well answered. So with this, we end our session here of mixed method researches. And thank you so much, ma'am, for your extensive enlightenment about this topic, particularly with your real life example, as well as your researches that is being undertaken you. So this made us more clearer about the concept of mixed method researches, and that definitely you have told different types of mixed method researches with the examples. So I think the researchers will take it into their consideration and they will apply in the researches. Okay, then so thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us today and giving your valuable time to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. It was really a